Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and urgently important medical deep dive, pulling straight from clinical expertise. We're going to unpack the mechanics of a disease whose absolute defining characteristic is deception. We're talking about bladder cancer.
So let's start with a genuinely encouraging number. If bladder cancer is caught early on, when it's still localized and confined just to the mucosa lining, the 5-year survival rate is a massive 87%. That makes it highly treatable. But here's the tragedy. The early warning signs are just so easily ignored, which lets the disease quietly progress to a much more dangerous stage.
Think about this for a second. Have you ever just completely dismissed a symptom because it went away on its own? Well, we're going to explore exactly why a symptom that causes literally zero pain and then conveniently just vanishes is actually the ultimate trap. It's this exact biological deception that ends up delaying a life-saving diagnosis for months. To arm you with this crucial knowledge, here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly run through the silent bladder threat, look at bladder anatomy and its vulnerabilities, hit the 4 major risk factors, and then cover 3 easily missed symptoms, tests for early detection, and finally 3 preventative daily habits you can start right away.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the silent bladder threat.
So here's the thing. While bladder cancer might not pop up quite as often as, say, colon or breast cancer, it is absolutely not a rare threat. Just to put into perspective, in Japan alone, recent clinical data showed over 30,000 new diagnoses and around 9,100 deaths in just a single year. And yeah, while about 65% of cases are caught early, the physical and mental toll is just immense. If we let those early, painless symptoms slide by unnoticed, the cancer can breach the muscle wall, spread out to the lymph nodes, and, well, those optimistic survival rates we talked about, they absolutely plummet.
Moving right along to Section 2, bladder anatomy and its unique vulnerabilities. What's really fascinating here is the unique tissue lining our urinary tract. It's called the urothelium. Basically, this identical cellular lining stretches all the way from the center of your kidneys, down the ureter tubes, coats the whole inside of your bladder, and then continues right out through the urethra. It's basically one continuous sheet. Because it's all the exact same vulnerable tissue. If a tumor pops up in your bladder, there's a staggering 60% chance that cancer is actually developing in multiple locations at the exact same time. You literally can't just check the bladder. You have to scan the entire plumbing system.
Okay, Section 3. Let's look at the 4 major risk factors.
Now, this is probably one of the most shocking revelations from our source material. When we think of smoking, we immediately think of lung cancer, right? Obviously. But get this. The chemical carcinogens in cigarette smoke actually enter your bloodstream, get filtered by your kidneys, and then just sit there brewing in your bladder. Because of this, smoking is directly responsible for half, yes, 50% of all bladder cancer cases in men and over 30% in women. Crazy, right?
Beyond smoking, which, by the way, can multiply your baseline risk up to 10 times if you're a heavy smoker, the risk really compounds based on a few other key factors. Demographically speaking, men are 4 times more likely to develop this than women, and it's heavily tied to age. Something like 90% of patients are 60 or older. But here's the real silent occupational killer: long-term exposure to stuff like chemical dyes, leather processing, paint, and cement. These industries use things called aromatic amines, and simply breathing or touching them over the years can actually skyrocket your risk of bladder cancer by up to 40 times.
All right, that brings us to Section 4, 3 easily missed symptoms.
The main reason diagnosis is so often tragically delayed is that these early warning signs flawlessly masquerade as something most of us would just brush off. A minor inconvenience, or something we simply chalk up to, quote-unquote, getting older.
If you're suddenly making frequent bathroom trips, and we're talking like 8 or more times a day here, or you have this lingering feeling that you haven't fully emptied your bladder, you'd naturally assume it's just a urinary tract infection, or maybe an enlarged prostate if you're a guy. The symptoms are virtually identical. But the absolutely defining difference you have to remember is this. A standard UTI is going to clear up in a few days with antibiotics. Cancer, on the other hand, will absolutely never improve with antibiotics. If those symptoms are lingering, it is definitely time to investigate deeper.
But the ultimate trap, the defining symptom of early bladder cancer, is something called gross hematuria. Basically, that means visible, noticeable blood in your urine that is completely 100% painless. And here is the worst part. It comes and goes. You might see red or brown urine one morning, and then the very next day it's totally clear again. This on and off nature tricks up to 20% of patients into believing they're totally fine, which delays their doctor's visit for months.
By the time the actual pain arrives, like flank pain that mimics a kidney stone or intense lower abdominal pain from blockages, the cancer has usually already advanced way beyond the bladder lining.
Let's move on to Section 5, Tests for Early Detection.
Since there isn't really a simple blood test for bladder cancer right now, doctors have to escalate their search step by step. They usually start with urine cytology, which is just checking your urine under a microscope to look for shed cancer cells. Next up is an ultrasound. But crucially, for this one, you have to drink a bunch of water and just hold it for an hour. Your bladder actually needs to be completely full to stretch the walls out so the doctor can spot any tumors larger than about a centimeter. Finally, if they're still suspicious, they'll do a cystoscopy. That's where they use a tiny endoscope to visually inspect the inside of the bladder, and they can even use a laser to just zap off early-stage mucosal tumors right then and there.
Now, modern medicine has a truly ingenious solution for early-stage aggressive cancer found right on the bladder lining. Get this, doctors will actually inject BCG, which, believe it or not, is literally the standard tuberculosis vaccine given to babies, directly into your bladder. It sounds wild, but this triggers a massive localized immune system response that goes in and attacks the cancer cells. It actually boasts a remarkable 65% to 80% success rate in completely eradicating the disease. Pretty amazing, right?
And finally, Section 6, 3 preventative daily habits you can start doing today.
All of this builds a huge case for taking action right now. If you're sitting there thinking, well, it's too late to quit smoking, the damage is already done, a massive meta-analysis actually proves otherwise. Quitting drops your risk multiplier from 3.49 times all the way down to 2.07. It just proves that your body can heal, and it is honestly never too late to take back control of your health. Oh, and utilizing medical nicotine patches can literally double your chances of quitting successfully, so definitely look into that. Okay, let's look at this massive 49% risk reduction, because this is something every single one of us can do starting today. A landmark 10-year study tracked nearly 50,000 people, and it showed that simply drinking ample water, specifically more than 2.5 liters a day, compared to under 1.3 liters, physically flushes dangerous concentrated carcinogens right out of your internal plumbing. You're washing them away before they can just sit there and mutate your bladder lining.
So, let's quickly summarize your daily defense plan. First, cut off the primary source of those carcinogens by quitting smoking. Second, if you happen to work in an industry dealing with paints, dyes, or leather, you need to ruthlessly shield yourself. Wear your proper protective masks and gloves, no exceptions. And third, consistently drink enough water. Aim for at least 1.5 to 2 liters minimum, and space it out evenly throughout the day to keep your biological recycling system totally flushed out and clean.
We've seen just how incredibly deceptive this disease can be, right? I mean, it literally relies on your complacency. So, the next time your body gives you a painless warning sign, especially if it's visible blood in your urine that just magically vanishes the next day, I want you to remember this explainer. Please don't just brush it off as nothing. Go to the doctor, take action, and absolutely refuse to let this silent threat hide in plain sight. Are you finally paying attention to what your body's trying to tell you? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive today, and stay healthy out there.